Welcome to the third dimension. Through a decade of conflict, Yemeni civil society organizations have sought to contribute to rebuilding peace and get involved in the mediation efforts, but they have faced considerable challenges. Civil society actors affirm that the lack of engagement, especially with grassroots civil society, being reflective of wider issues with the UN's approach to Yemen crisis, where it tends to favor political elites over grassroots civil society actors who are committed to long-term stability and peace building. The international community seems to have failed to support Yemeni civil society to prepare for a role during and following the conflict, while parties to the conflict have often manipulated organizations in a highly politicized context. Meanwhile, experts stress that the involvement of civil society in mediation efforts can ensure that the political process is more representative of the Yemeni people's interests, especially given the tendency for political elites to dominate the negotiations. To discuss this topic joins me from the United Kingdom, Dr. Hamdan Dammag. Dr. Hamdan Dammag is a prize-winning novelist, poet and researcher with several publications. He received his PhD in computer science from the United Kingdom. Currently, he works as an executive director of Hamdan for media and cultural development, the United Kingdom, and a member of the executive committee of Labour Friends of Yemen and the British Yemeni Society. He is the son of the renowned Yemeni novelist Zaid Muti' Dammag. Dr. Hamdan, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Now, if we start straight away, Dr. Hamdan, okay, now almost a decade of conflict in Yemen, and the political horizon does not seem ambitious. The question is, through the lens of a Yemeni civil society activist and a peace advocate, how would you describe the possibility of the political solution in the country?
Right. Well, to be honest, the situation in Yemen today is extremely complex. While the conflict has always, of course, been challenging, but recent regional and international developments have made things even more complicated, made it worse. You know, we see developments like, Iran, direct Israeli intervention in the process, new power dynamics going on, and, especially in the Red Sea. We also see a new administration in the USA, Trump administration. We see the designation of Houthis as terrorist organization. All these actually have introduced new challenges to the picture, and at the same time, we have the humanitarian crisis continues to escalate in Yemen. Yemen is caught in a state of no war and no peace. This makes it difficult for the people to move forward. Peace efforts, as we know, need a new push with real incentives for all parties to come to the table.
Okay, so as you have mentioned, just different, I would say, reasons that complicate to the Yemeni crisis, Dr. Hamdan, and one of the reasons you mentioned is the regional tensions, either the Gaza war, and we have also the Red Sea crisis. If we stick, for instance, to the Red Sea crisis, we know that just 2 weeks ago, when a ceasefire was announced in Gaza, the Houthis and said that they will limit their Red Sea attacks, and so far we are observing that things are working. The question is, do you think de-escalation, okay, in Gaza and the limit of Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, would these factors help to push for peace again in the country?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Any step that reduces tension in the Red Sea can be helpful. However, this announcements of the Houthi might not be convincing enough for the key players like the US and its allies. As the security of international trade routes has now become a global issue. It's not only a Yemeni issue.
Yes.
So the real challenge is that the Houthis still have the ability to threaten the Red Sea security, whether they choose or whether this is could be something Iran wants to use. It doesn't matter. I mean, Houthis still have the ability to threaten the security of the Red Sea. As I said, whether a coordination with Iran or for its own political leverage. They could use this issue as, if you want to say it, as a bargaining chip.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the Yemeni peace process depends on all stakeholders committing to dialogue and compromise. Unfortunately, that level of commitment is still lacking and not clear.
Okay. So always talking about the Houthi threat in the Red Sea, Dr. Hamdan, and we know that when these attacks began, the world attention was diverted from pushing for peace in Yemen into what we call containing the Houthi threat. And we have just seen how Biden's administrations, behaved towards the Houthis and this kind of interceptive airstrikes. Now, with Trump back in the White House, Dr. Hamdan, do you think the U.S. administration's approach, would be a bit different?
I mean, if we're talking about the designation of Houthis again as a terrorist group, I think this was expected by this new administration. As you remember, the original designation was made in 2021.
Yes.
But then Biden later revoked it.
Yes.
Citing, of course, humanitarian concerns. Now with the Houthi actually directly attacking U.S. ships and threatening the Red Sea security, I think Trump has reinstated the designation, and that was really expected move. This decision, of course, aims to cut off weapons and financial resources for the Houthis. Yeah. It's strictly enforced. It could weaken their. I mean, if it's applied, then it will weaken their military and economic capabilities, of course. Nevertheless, the impact, of course, on the Yemeni humanitarian situation remains a major concern. This will affect the humanitarian efforts, the organizations working inside Yemen. Their work will be directly affected by this. There will be indirect effect, to the supply chain of basic goods. This will result on an increase or sharp increase in the prices of basic goods. So we have actually a complicated picture that we will see as a result of this designation. And the humanitarian case, of course, should be always in mind.
Okay, so as you just stressed, the humanitarian crisis being affected by Trump's designation to the Houthis, Dr. Hamdan, we all know that the militia or the non-actor state, does not care about their own people, So the question is, do you think such measures will deter the Houthis
To some extent, it will. But as you said, they might not be affected by the hardship that will reflect on the people. But of course, they will be affected by the finance, by the there will be more direct cut to the transactions and things like that, which Houthis used in the past for their benefit.
Yeah.
What concerns us as well, and that's sorry if I repeat it again and again, is that if certain parties inside Yemen don't care about the population, I think we should also do this and care about it, and we have to study exactly what's going to happen and the possible consequences of this, because, as you know, it's at the end of the day, is the citizens of Yemen are paying the price for this.
Exactly. Now, as you said that if the parties in Yemen do not care about their own people, so we should also do something to help the vulnerable Yemenis. And this will bring me to talk about the Yemeni government. It's not only the Houthis, we are talking about parties of conflict here, Dr. Hamdan. And perhaps you must have been following demonstrations of people erupting in Aden, in Lahd, in Al-Dali', okay? These people are demonstrating to demand better public services. The question is, okay, within this environment, how do you assess the efficiency of the PLC or the Yemeni government in the liberated areas?
Right. I mean, what's happening in cities like Eden with the electricity problem and all the hardship the people actually suffering is unprecedented and not acceptable, to be honest, because they are not under the same situation like those in the areas under Houthi control, and people would expect the level of services to be much, much better. Coming to your question about the Yemeni government or the PLC, I think the Presidential Leadership Council was, as you know, formed in 2022 as part of the Riyadh Agreement, and the idea was to unify the
anti-Houthi camp, perhaps.
And the different factions that they constitute the legitimate government. However, more than 2 years now, the council actually remains fragmented to some extent, and its ability to govern effectively is still in question, and that's actually whether it is the council or the government. I think for the PLC to be successful in the future, to run the country well, it must act quickly to do the following. It has to develop a clear political and governance strategy, and to present a unified message, a unified narratives, both for Yemenis and the international community, and to resolve the internal conflicts and build trust among their members. And this is very fundamental requirements for their success. Yemenis and the world want to see a strong united leadership, and not a divided council with competing agendas. This will not help them. It will not help Yemen. It will not help the peace process itself.
Okay, so we are done with the parties of the conflict, Dr. Hamdan. Perhaps we can now dig into the core of this interview, which is the role of civil society, Yemen civil society. Now, Dr. Hamdan, as a person who is leading one organizations in the diaspora, okay, we hear about meetings of the Office of the Special Envoys there in Amman, there in Aden, okay, involving youth, involving civil society organization. The question is, Dr. Hamdan, are civil society organizations really involved in the mediation efforts?
I wouldn't say they are involved in the mediation efforts in, like the official ones, but they are very much involved in the peace building process. And peace building process is a big process that involves different actors. if I want to speak about the Yemeni in the diaspora, for example, their role in helping, the peace process, I think the Yemeni peace process requires continuous engagement, not just from politicians, but also from civil society and the global Yemeni community. The Yemeni diaspora has historically, as you know, played a major role in shaping the country's future. Whether this was during the 26th of September revolution or the 14th of October revolution, or more recent efforts, the Yemeni abroad have always, been central to major political and social transformations. And we are now talking about one of the major political and social transformation, which is going to peace, ending the war and going to a peace. So today, civil societies organizations in the diaspora can help in several ways. They can advocate for peace and for the humanitarian aid. They can engage with the international policymakers, to keep Yemen on the agenda, not to leave Yemen as a forgotten case, to support peace initiatives on the ground by, connecting local activities with the global network. And this is very, very important. And I think this is in the core of their role and duty, actually, to play for the peace process.
Yeah, okay. Now, as you have raised it already, Dr. Hamdan, okay, you are also a member, always talking about the role of Yemen civil society in the diaspora. How can they push for peace or even alleviate the human suffering of Yemenis? Now, as a member of the Executive Committee of the Labour Friends of Yemen and the British Yemeni Society, and by the virtue of this position, Dr. Hamdan, okay, would you tell us about things that you have done in order to lobby for your country?
Right. As I said, people who live abroad, whether temporary or for good, they have a role to play and they have tools to use, and maybe they are in a better position to help than those who are inside Yemen.
Yeah. Do you meet with British MPs, Dr. Hamdan?
Yes, of course. So, for example, the people abroad can actually have a very direct link with the politicians of that country, and they always can explain the Yemeni case better than anyone else.
Yes.
We have an experience with this in the United Kingdom here. We have established a group within the Labour Party, and we call it the Labour Friends of Yemen.
Yes.
And the idea was for the Labour Party at that time, which was in the opposition still.
Yeah, but now they are in office.
They are now in power. Yes, they are the government. At that time, the idea was to actually make the Labour Party understand the Yemeni issue better, because there was lots of misunderstanding of what's happening in Yemen. And the idea was that if the Labour Party, which is opposition at that time, a government now, want to help Yemen, then they must understand the Yemeni issue. And it was no one else better than the Yemenis who can explain the details of this crisis. And I think we have done a very good job by this. The Labour Friends of Yemen has been expanded then. It has affected the way the Labour Party dealt with the Yemeni issue. And we still work as a consultation body for the British government when it comes to Yemen. Yeah. This is just an example, a small example of what the Yemenis abroad can do.
Yes.
And the other things they can do is also they can, through their organizations, their work, they can get directly involved in the peace process. And this is what we are doing, for example, in one of the projects we do in Tamadun. Tamadun is a foundation here in the UK. And part of what they do is we are engaged with the peace building process in Yemen through some projects funded by the British government. And the idea was for us in this project is to actually help the, if we can call it the peace forces inside Yemen, whether they are peace advocates, peace persons, peace groups, to
agents.
to actually come together, coordinate their work so that they become a number. Because what we have noticed is that people want peace inside Yemen, but they don't know how to reflect their voices, how to raise their concerns, and how to become actually a player. If you notice that they don't exist when it comes to negotiations, for example. So the idea was how to actually get them together to form kind of a representative body for all these efforts, and so that these efforts can actually have a great effect. And we believe that Yemenis inside Yemen are the first drive for peace, because this is their interest and this is their future.
Okay. Now, within your organization and these working forces on the ground, Dr. Hamdan, do you reach government-held areas or also Houthi-controlled areas?
No, we try to reach all areas in Yemen. If you want to make peace, you have to talk to all different people involved in the conflict. There is no point of talking to people who actually with peace, but they don't have any channel of communication with the other. So we go as far as we can to different places, whether Sana'a, whether other other places in areas under Houthi controls, and we go, of course, to other provinces in the south and in the east.
Okay. Now, if you would like to wrap up this conversation, Dr. Hamdan, okay, but away from politics, perhaps focusing on you as Dr. Hamdan, the novelist, the poet, and the writer. And just a final question, if you may. The question is, how conflict, Dr. Hamdan, how the idea of conflict has shaped your literary works?
Right. I mean, I think writers, creative, people are not, away from what's happening in Yemen. They should be in the core and the heart of the suffering of the Yemeni people, and I think they realize that they have a role to play. Coming to your question about how this actually affects the writing, the topics, the style, I think war always have an effect on literature, on arts, and this is natural because we are reflecting what we feel, we are reflecting what we think is important to us.
Would you refer to a specific work of you, Dr. Hamdan?
Yes,
which that is,
for me, and I've always said that in poetry, maybe it's more easy for poetry to catch up with the development.
Yes.
And maybe it's not the case with novels, because novels take more time to grasp the idea. They take years to understand what's happening, while in poetry you can actually express yourself quickly and reactively, towards what's happening. And I've been involved in a project over 3 years with the Liverpool Arab Art Festivals. It's called The Conflict in Yemen, Poems of Hope and War. And we produced a collection of poetry that came out of a series of workshops that we've done, where we asked the Yemeni poets from different generations, from different backgrounds, to express their feeling towards this war and the future peace in poetry. It was a very fantastic experience, and we published a book. It's there and it's available for people to download from the site of the Liverpool Arab Art Festival. So yes, again, the Yemeni writers, the Yemeni poets, they should be involved in this, not only in reflecting this in their work, but also in advocating for peace. And I think this is very important.
Yeah, perhaps we can do another interview on Dr. Hamdan's as a writer away from politics. Okay, with this we come to the end of this interview, Dr. Hamdan. Thank you so much for talking to Yemen Today TV, and thank you for your time and insights.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
That's all for this week. See you next time with a new edition of The Third Dimension.